today we're gonna do something a little different. We're gonna review a video because there's this one young brother out there named Kova who I definitely would say dropped some strong points in this latest video that I watched of his, and I hollered at him, said, "Hey man, can I review the video? Because there's a lot of key points in here that I really feel like resonated with me. So I wanted to, get my opinion on it. So here we go."
Is a multifaceted pursuit. The purpose of art leaves a wide range of interpretation to it. Self-expression is probably the simplest intent affixed to creating art. I have this feeling that I need to expel into the world and only feel comfortable doing so by writing, drawing, singing, acting, filming, etc., etc. And
As a creative myself, I feel what he's saying by just having these like wide range of avenues of creativity. Like sometimes it like you feel like since you can do this one thing, that it's not that much harder for you to pick up this other thing, and quite honestly, usually ain't.
an important aspect of art creation, whether intentional or not, is that art can be used to pinpoint a place in time. We can get a sense of what was going on by looking at the art pieces produced during a certain period of time. The context behind the feelings being put into the certain pieces of artwork. Comics are no stranger to that. Since the inception of the sequential art form that is comic books, they have been used to express a multitude of ideas and feelings that were directly rooted by the time and place the creator was born and raised. The origin of the modern superhero is a direct reflection of what was needed in a hostile, warring world and era. Creators like Jack Kirby created super powerful beings in order to
I know I'm not saying a lot right now, but I'm trying to let my brother get it set it up because he's trying to cook right now, so I'm letting him cook. I'm letting him get his build up.
give us a little bit of hope. During the time when comic books were under attack by curmudgeons using children as shields to push their rhetoric, a period of hyper censorship directly led to an era of counterculture comics, starting with publications like Mad Magazine, created by Harvey Kurtzman and William Gaines. Mad was widely emanated and influential, affecting satirical media as well as the cultural landscape of the late 20th century, with editor Al Fledstein increasing readership to more than 2 million readers during its 1973 to 1974 circulation peak. Mad influenced a whole generation of comic book creators, notable cartoonists like Art Spiegelman, Robert Crumb, and many more of their peers. Robert Crumb and Art Spiegelman led the way for the new wave of underground comics with their counterculture comic anthologies like Arcade, The Comics Revenue, Zapped Comics, and Raw. These three comic
Yep.
magazines were pivotal in the curation of the underground movements of the 1960s to the 1990s, featuring so many cartoonists with versatile art styles and storytelling techniques. These magazines brought an artistic uptick in a fleeting underground scene that was being stereotyped as cheap thrill comics, only good for displays of the absurd, sex, and drugs, when in reality, underground comics were way bigger and way more diverse than that. In the 1980s, there was a second underground wave, most notably known as the black and white indie boom. Comics like Cerebus, Flaming Carrot, The Tick, Bone, and most notably Teenage Mutant.
If y'all haven't seen this video, well, first of all, I'm glad that y'all, discovering this through however you are, because this young brother puts in some serious detail and work into these videos. The effort that he is going into this research.
Ninja Turtles. One of the most important aspects of the 1980s boom, outside of the great contemporary comics, was the vocal avocation of creator independence and creator rights. Dave Sims, the creator of Cerebus, wrote a book about how to self-publish your own comics the way he did with his Cerebus series. Indie creators were trying to collate and create things like the Creator Bills of Rights. In Scott McCloud's blog, he wrote, "The Creator Bill of Rights was written in November 1988 for the two-day summit of comic book artists held in Northampton, Massachusetts. The meeting had been suggested by Cerebus creator Dave Sims and hosted by local heroes Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, creators of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The summit was a follow-up to a July meeting in Toronto, which produced the Creative Manifesto. Some of us found the manifesto a bit scattered, so I wrote a rough draft of a proposed replacement. That replacement, a Bill of Rights for comic creators, was accepted quickly as Sims' suggestion. The rest of the day was nonstop argument about the document's wording. He continued with, "The bill never generated much noise in the comic industry, and I wouldn't want to exaggerate its influence, but it produced an interesting snapshot of our attitudes at the time and the climate that was fueling self publishers, progressive business people, and artistic tryings to reinvent the comic industry. Neil Adams was a big vocal leader for creator rights, being a strong vocal leader for artists to get the rights to their own original artwork back from the comic companies to be able to sell said artwork for supplementary income, something that wasn't allowed prior. Neil Adams also at one point tried to unionize comic book artists, but many of his attempts fell through, just as it did in years past with other creators before him. Though Adams' efforts helped change a few things on how creators got paid, DC initiated a new royalty program in 1981, the work of publisher Jeanette Kahn, who cited Neil Adams' influences on her decision, which pushed Marvel into doing the same a few months later. All the hard work of these creators of the past advocating for comic artist rights, I believe, illuminated and peaked with the formation of the iconic, supposedly indie comic book company Image Comics. We all know the story of Image Comics, right? I've covered it a few times on this channel. Real quick, TLDR, some of the most popular artists from Marvel, literally the top selling artists at the time, defected from the company and created Image Comics, echoing the sentiments of comic creators of the past, using the same talking points as some of their underground peers. Image Comics' main focus was better pay and IP ownership for creators. These creators were able to capitalize on their hype and popularity that grew over at Marvel and brought all their fans over to buying their own original, completely creator-owned comics, while also getting lucky that the comic industry was in the midst of a speculator boom. New number
The wild thing about this is like that hasn't been done since. You know what I'm saying? Like to this level, it hasn't been done since. Like right now, you got Robert Kirkman who is leading the industry. I would say as an indie guy, and I mean, in my opinion, he's kind of like now to the point where he himself is fighting with Marvel and DC at that level of competition. But I mean, that dude pretty much reached his market outside of comic books because people, the average person doesn't know that The Walking Dead is a comic. The average person might know that Invincible is a comic book, but that's because it looks like one. The Walking Dead doesn't. It just looks like The Night of the Living Dead, the TV show. So the average person isn't going to know that. So he was able to reach people who have no give a fuck about comic books. That's how you do it.
one comics were selling like hotcakes, and those Image comic boys were pushing them out. A few decades later, Image Comics has cemented itself as the third most popular comic book publisher behind Marvel and DC Comics, still keeping its same mission at hand of allowing creators who publish through them to keep ownership of their IPs. Although since the exception of Image Comics, the industry has changed, and I'd argue not for the better, but actually for the worse, specifically for the identity of indie underground comic scene. See, Image Comics and its founding fathers ran on this idea of creator independence, though many of the artists and Image itself wasn't a indie company. In its first year, the original Image books were published through Malibu Comics. Todd McFarlane, Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee, and others weren't printing and mailing comics off themselves like many of the actual indie comics creators were doing at the time. Someone like Jeff Smith comes to mind, who was mailing and distributing his own Bones comics with his wife when he first started cartoon books. McFarlane, Liefeld, Lee, and others were actually pretty damn wealthy by the time they split from Marvel, benefiting from the change in royalty system I had mentioned before that pays very well when you're selling tons of X-Men, Spider-Man, and X-Force comics. So it wasn't much of a risk for them to break off and start their own things. Essentially,
I feel what he's saying on that because it's like a situation where you have someone who was already mainstream, had everything that they needed for them mainstream was like the push mainstream for them to say, you know what, I'm going to take all of those resources that I gained from that and I'm going to do it on my own. But it's not really on your own because you didn't get built up through an indie company. You got built up through the biggest companies. Now, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that because it still takes the skill to get that done. But what I'm saying is it's not the same.
I say all that to say Image Comics is a fake indie comic publisher that benefited from the work of hurting and starving comic artists. Image
See, he said that too. I agree. I agree with what he said.
seemed to co-opt the identity of indie comic creators while not actually being indie itself. The only people who positively gained from the Image Comics breakoff were the original founders and really nobody else, actually leaving the industry worse off than it was before.
See, that I don't agree with because when you think about it, Kirkman is someone who did benefit from the fact that Image does exist because Robert Kirkman is the person who created those two big IPs that now are still attached to Image. So all of that stuff does generate back through Image. But again, how many other comic books have went through Image besides his? Not to mention how many books he has that still don't get the same level of like success as those two other IPs because of their TV shows.
Before. Think about it. Do you ever wonder why there's no more comic book artist superstars like Rob, Todd, and Jim? Why companies will push writers over artists? Everyone remembers Robert Kirkman's The Walking Dead, Grant Morrison's Animal Man, Neil Adams' Sandman, but you'd very seldom see the artists of these series being promoted as much as the writers. Collected editions of these comic series with the writer's name slapped on the cover with big, bold, blocky text, while the artist's name is hidden within the pages of the book. I've talked about
That part, that part. Let me tell you that as someone who does draw and write my own comic book, I think the main reason why I write my own comic book is because I am aware that when it comes to this, Stan Lee is way more known to the public than Jack Kirby. Now, as far as like our community goes, everyone knows Jack. Everyone loves Jack. But I guarantee if you was to ask a kid who has only watched the MCU, he doesn't know who Steve Ditko is. He doesn't know who Jack Kirby is. He only knows the guy who kept doing the cameos. Rest in peace.
this phenomenon before in an older video. Go check that out. But in general, what the Image guys did was leave a
That
bad
guy kept
taste in the
doing the
mouths of
cameos is a
Marvel and
legend.
DC, who quickly vowed to never
You say what?
The guy kept doing the cameos is a legend.
Yeah, how many of the characters did he draw?
Touche.
Better yet, now that she mentions that, do you know how many people, if you was to ask them about comic books that do love comic books, if you ask them how many of their favorite artists, how many of them can name five of them? Me, as someone who has been like my entry into comic books was, ooh, I like that picture. I want to see if I can draw it. I got my artistic creativity from my father, so it wasn't like the same for me. It was, ooh, that picture looks cool. I want to see if I can repeat it. And of course, I would bypass the whole like concept of trying to scale out the art and everything like that, and just go immediately to how the final project looked. But nonetheless, it was because, hey, the picture looks cool. I want to draw that. Let me see if I can repeat that. And that's not what you get when you're the artist of a comic book. Instead, you get put, a couple pages into the book, and then on top of that, you may only get a couple of pages of the book. I don't know if a lot of people notice that, but some comic books will usually just change styles halfway through a book. That's not because the person was like, well, let me switch it up. It's because there was a whole different artist on that book. And if you're talking about mainstream, the big two, most commonly they want you to focus and stay within the realm of their already known styles. They really don't want you to branch outside of trying to come up with something creative. They want you to do what has already been done, and if you do something outside of the box, make sure you put everything back in the box.
allowed the artist to become bigger than the program, slowly prompting up writers and minimalizing the artist's name. It also didn't help that all the comics that came out of the first run of Image were damn near unreadable, giving the perception that good artists were shitty writers, when in fact that wasn't true. Only the Image guys were ass at writing, mainly because these dudes were too worried about cashing in on their new number one comics and not actually creating one good series, ripping off many of the team comics that they were working on while they were at Marvel or DC before they defected. Outside of McFarlane and Eric Larson, who made their own original idea IPs with Spawn and Savage Dragon, Spawn being a waste of potential of a comic book series. Check out my video about that. While Savage Dragon is something.
He says Spawn is a wasted potential of. Oh my goodness. I mean, I feel what he's saying because, like, Spawn is still like, he spawned. So again, we all know who Spawn is. But I swear to God, my wife did not know who Spawn was until I was like, oh, yeah, Spawn. And she was like, oh, who the fuck is that? Todd McFarlane is the GOAT, one of the GOATs when it comes to the indie industry. But again, he came in as one of the GOATs of the industry. So it wasn't that hard for him to just step down. It's like an NFL coach being like, you know what? I'm tired of winning Super Bowls around here. About to go to college.
Else at this point. Eric Larson's got Steamboat Willie and Savage Dragon doing some wild shit as of late. If you know, you know. All of these initial flaws from Image Comics hurt the perception of the comic book artist as a whole in the mainstream. Image had a real chance to change the game and create real impact, but they really didn't. I said it before, the idea of creator ownership and creators' rights wasn't something new. They just used that as a veil to cover up the fact that the original Image founding fathers were just trying to milk their teenage fan bases at the time, who are now the same grown-ups online claiming that the Image comics were peak indie comics and trying to hold those metrics of sales from Wildcats, Youngblood, and Spawn as the rule and not the exception, ruining the reality of what it looks like to be a real indie artist. Not only that, once things started getting a bit rocky, two of the biggest and notable names from Image founding fathers ran back to Marvel, and Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld, to work on the mid-ass Heroes Reborn series, essentially giving back
The Heroes Reborn series never got better either. That's bad, even when they weren't attached to it. That's funny. On top of that, like, again, look at the situation. Look at who is in the center of these two dudes. Like, how could this been possibly considered as the indie like standard? This isn't the standard. Like when you got people that are out there like Captain Underpants and Bone that you can go into a school and see them sitting there right next to the big three. And a kid will pick them over the big three.
the power to Marvel, proving that it wasn't truly about creator
They're
independence for
goofier.
those artists. It was about a bag. A bag
Hmm?
They're goofier. You want to pick, if you're a kid, you want to pick the goofy books, not the grown-up books.
And
You
that
don't
was
want to pick a
said by
book
the
where someone
kid.
died. You want to pick a book where someone farts on something.
And that was said by the kid. The kid ain't there for all that hardcore dialogue. Don't get me wrong. In my comic book, I do have some dialogue, some hardcore dialogue that maybe a kid may not be able to always grasp. But at the same time, I am aware
I read
that.
darker content. Even I will go for the softer, darker content.
that no one else was able to get outside of Jim Lee or Rob Liefeld. The outliers, not the norms. The commodification of the indie aesthetic isn't new. This tends to happen once a low-key underground fringe artistic movement starts to become a bit popular. In my lifetime, one of the biggest co-ops of indie art was with the SoundCloud music scene. I was in high school
Hold on now.
the peak of SoundCloud. The rap music I found on that app was something so much more different than anything I was hearing from the mainstream at the time. And it was created by regular people who had a mic in a closet and a cracked version of FL Studios on a laptop, which made me even more
Hi. Definitely was in basements. FL Studios cracked FL Studios because wasn't nobody out here paying for shit. When I say if you found somebody who was actually paying for Fruity Loops, then that means they were smacking the indie people, I mean the underground folks, over the fucking head where they had the funding to do something like that because Fruity Loops was not cheap. It's not cheap.
compelled to listen to them. Artists like Young Lean, Bones, Denzel Curry, Xavier Wolf, XXXTentacion, Father, I Love McConan, Puya, Rob Banks, and many artists came from that wave with their own unique sound and look. These artists circumvented the mainstream music industry for doing everything DIY, recording themselves, making their own music videos, managing their own tours, merch, and so much more.
Um, Drill rap also evolved from SoundCloud. Cats like Chief Keef, Lil Durk, all them they all came from SoundCloud. When SoundCloud was able to do what it did, not just SoundCloud, but that Piff. Like those two together, there's a reason why Spotify popped up and did what it did and decided to push all that out of the way and make everybody think, no, 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 come on over here. We got the plan for you. And now you see how that's all panning out.
I remember being all in on SoundCloud artists. At one point, that was all I listened to. I was on some fuck the mainstream type vibes.
As someone who was a SoundCloud artist, I totally feel you on that. But my goodness, that definitely had to been some hard level quality of music because you had to sift. You know, like how nowadays, like everyone's got a phone, so everyone has access to the world through things like TikTok and things like that. That's what SoundCloud was. It opened up the floodgates for us. It allowed us to all have a voice. Now, and all of us needed one.
All the organic indie creatorship was lost once one rapper appeared on the scene, and that was Little
And there is my point. My God.
Yachty. Once Little Yachty came on the scene with his bright red braids and beads in them, that was the day, in my opinion, SoundCloud started to die. Not because Little Yachty made bad music or anything. It was
Yes, because Yachty made bad music and everything.
just Yachty was already signed to a major label while still putting music out on SoundCloud. Yachty's explosion in popularity brought eyes to SoundCloud artists, whether good or bad, it didn't matter. These record label execs started poaching
Double XL was already coming and getting a lot of cats from SoundCloud, so therefore the industry was already looking at them. It's just that, like you said, Yachty was already signed, so people, the industry, saw the money that they could do by pushing that, which was the main source for people's like entertainment at that time. That was the streaming site. It really didn't have anything to do with the fact that it was SoundCloud, because if you look at it now, it's Spotify that does the exact same thing. But what it was that's where all of the indie voices were.
artists left and right. These execs did this secretly though, wanting to slowly introduce their signed artists as an indie underground SoundCloud artist because that was what was cool at the
But
time.
he
Even though it
died
was
with a
all a big
mouth
lie.
really
After
funny.
Yachty bursted the SoundCloud bubble, many of the
Wow,
artists
that
coming out
insurance is
stopped
real.
being original and started trying to copy the trend. They didn't care about the art of rap or music. They just wanted to become popular and seeing post
Woo, look at that culture vulture right there. Can I just I'm gonna talk about him later. I'm gonna talk.
posting music on SoundCloud as a quick way in. These execs thought the same as well. Giving the DIY aesthetic was low cost and low risk. Billie Eilish is the biggest example of this, using the fake indie aesthetic when she first appeared, making it seem as if she was some random girl who was making music in a room with her producer brother, even though her brother was already a signed artist and so was she before she actually posted music anywhere. This is what
This is like in sports when you have someone who has been in the league, who has all of these resources and all of these benefits to being a pro athlete with the salary that they have. To be fair and to understand, not all musicians and artists make any money or money whatsoever. For the most part, most of them go in the negative. To be fair, what I'm saying is that normally when you are an artist and you have been connected to the industry, you know what it may take artistically for a certain sound or a certain vibe or a certain level of energy that when you do actually, you know, put something out there to the world, you can just about guarantee it's going to gain traction because you've been taught what the industry expects.
people call an industry plan. Billie Eilish is not the first nor the last of this artist. There's
Anybody who is signed to a major label, anybody, everybody who is signed to a major label is an industry plant. But there is no such thing as an industry plant because now you're expecting for a label to do its job. Labels don't do their job. They don't. Like flat out. If you were an artist trying to get signed back in the SoundCloud era, you had to have a certain amount of clicks and views before you even got the chance of getting the attention of a label because they weren't going to put in that money. They weren't going to put in the budget behind someone and unless they were guaranteeing that they were going to get their money back. People like what was his name? Trinidad James. Trinidad James had a $2 million deal for one song. The label was not playing around when it came to that type of stuff. And when I say all labels, that was before it was only three of them.
There's nothing wrong with being an artist with money or having financial help with your artistic ventures, but it does become a problem when you front like all your success just came from your own self determination and grinding hard. That you're
I feel what he's saying on that. But again, in order for you to become nationally known, where you are getting things like Super Bowl, things like that, you do have to have a push behind you involving people with money far greater than your own. It doesn't happen otherwise. Just about e- even if when you look at when Drake when he first came up and he was successful and he was just starting to get his rise, when he would go and people would ask him about his own country, he would even say, I mean, they're proud of me now, but it was mainly because he had to gain attention elsewhere, which is how usually it works in the music industry or in all industries for the most part. There's no real like support from local. You really have to get it where people locally first go, "Oh, they're also from that place? That's pretty cool." And that will actually then get their attention. But otherwise, for the most part, people are too busy looking out than to look in.
your popularity was all do it yourself and independent, when in fact it wasn't. It sets a horrible precedent, skewing the view of what indie success really looks like, not what these corporations present it to be compared to what it actually looks like. Kind of like when one of those hustle bros tries to tell you to work hard and out hustle everybody, well, then you can become a millionaire like them, even though many of those guys came from a place of privilege or a wealthy family or are a trust fund baby. Now let's look at modern image. This so
Or just a flat out fucking liar. Period. Flat out. They will tell you this is what you need to do. This is how you do it. This is how you get this money. They don't actually get that money unless it's through their social media because of all of the clicks and the views and the conversations and comments and impressions and ad revenue. But other than that, nah, they don't know what the hell they're talking about.
called indie comics hub. At this point in time, to me, Image Comics is just a label you stick on your comics. They are like A24 or Blumhouse, publishing comics by already established comic book pros whose projects didn't get picked up by Marvel or they didn't want to give to Marvel. Never breaking any
That's the big factor. I think nowadays a lot more people are aware that it is a lot better for you to keep your own IP independent than it is for you to try to give your work to the people who will, once you leave, because your book only does 6 issues and then this the focal point of canceling it, what you gave them stays. You leave, your character development, your effort, all of your hard work, your growth of that depth of that character that people all of a sudden like, who's this new character? Yeah, they stay. You go, they stay.
artists and only promoting creators, mainly writers who are already their best sellers. Robert Kirkman, Rick Remender, Brian K. Vaughan, these guys alone have kept Image afloat with their comics they've written in the past decades. If it's not these writers who get the hype machine, it's legacy creators who get some hype whenever they decide to pull a new gimmick out their ass, like doing all Spawn covers on select Image titles or republishing Rob Liefeld's Youngblood comic, which Image has put a ton of their marketing dollars behind, trying to make everybody forget how ass that comic really is. Even getting some notable creators to hype up the release of this Rob Liefeld comic.
That's the other thing. Like outside again, big comic, like fanatics. How many people know these stories? How many people know these characters? Like seriously know these characters. It goes back to the whole thing like the people who put in the blood and the effort of this industry are the artists. The people who can come in and do the writing, They're just coming in after the artist has already put in all that effort and work to make whatever they were trying to convey look good.
Rob Liefeld, the guy who goes on wildly ridiculous rants on his podcast, who couldn't wait to take the sole credit for Deadpool once the movie came out and turned the character from a D-list character to an A-list character. Even though all the aspects of Deadpool people like, he really didn't contribute to. Rob Liefeld, who scammed hella people off a Kickstarter,
He absolutely did not. He absolutely did not. As a matter of fact, in my opinion, the Deadpool that is like most commonly known that people like, oh, that's Deadpool. I feel like came from the Deadpool in cable comics because that was like the biggest like push Deadpool really got in Marvel for the most part. When a lot of characters don't really get the push that people think that they get. To be fair, before the Avengers movies even were concocted,
The Avengers weren't important.
not at all. The Avengers weren't important. Iron Man wasn't important. Thor wasn't important. Hulk wasn't important.
Yeah,
Captain
but
America
just
wasn't important. That's
they
why they were all on the same team together because their comic books wouldn't sell.
were just
35K to be exact,
there.
off of false promises of a Brigade reboot. Then he went to Indiegogo and scammed more of his fans for more money. Then, if you mention it to him on social media, guess what? You're blocked. Rob Liefeld, the guy who hates Marvel Studios, especially Kevin Feige, for not inviting him to the Deadpool Wolverine
The wild thing about it is like with the internet being, the encyclopedia where it's at your hand. You don't have to go to a shelf and possibly read something like this or like read a newspaper or something so old. There is zero reason for people to still be giving this man their money for things that they know ain't gonna come, but still they do. That's the wild part. I cannot be mad that that happens. I can only be mad that he still does it, knowing that people are going to give him their money. But it's dumb in itself that people are still willing to give him their money, knowing it's not going to work out.
film after party. One thing for certain, two things for sure. Nostalgia is a hell of a drug, and Rob Liefeld is selling it by the pound. Jim Lee and Tommy McFarlane are selling this.
Plus, I mean, when you look at his art don't really hold up now. Like compared, I'm not even talking about the Captain America picture because that was bullshit. I'm talking about his actual art. There are people now who can do it better that are also cheaper because again, Rob Liefeld comes with the title of Rob Liefeld. That means more money.
Nostalgia as well. McFarlane is still whoring out Spawn, while Jim Lee works for DC Comics doing whatever, I guess. I mean, Lee recently spoke out against the use of AI, but it's kind of a
As they should, right? They should. They should be the main people that are out there saying AI art is bad. They should be. How long it's going to last, I don't know. Because they're also the main people who don't like to pay their artists and writers. And that's not just DC. That's Marvel. That's just how the industry works. Because again, as far as like the whole of these IPs, if you were to take a grid of Spider-Man, just him alone, his comic books compared to everything else, his comic books is a small piece of that pie.
moot point. Lee also cashed in on his original IPs by just selling them back to DC. So again, it's about the bag, not creator independence. Outside of those types of creators, good luck getting any help promoting your comic from Image. There's no reason Kaya shouldn't be a bestseller comic. Kaya is a comic written and drawn by Wes Craig, an artist best known for working on Deadly Class with writer Rick Remender. Kaya is an ongoing fantasy adventure comic. The main character Kaya has a magical arm and hunter-like skills, who is tasked with delivering her brother Jin to a safe haven after the village is destroyed. Jin is foretold by the elders of their village to be the golden child who is going to save humanity from the Artarian Empire and their deadly robot army. The storytelling and artwork in this comic is beautiful. The storytelling is seamless. I binge read this comic in a week. I was so enamored by
No, the artwork looks pretty sick on this. I'm not gonna lie.
By Wes Craig's artwork and the visual storytelling. In my opinion, this comic should be at the top of everyone's pull list. A true all ages comic that isn't immature or goofy, but not too serious or gory. It falls in the same vein of an Adventure Time or Avatar The Last Airbender. Sadly, this comic is not talked about enough at all. It's shitty that many indie artists seem to get the idea that publishing a comic through Image Comics is the golden ticket, but it's not. It's not what it used to be, or better yet, it never actually was that.
I'm not gonna lie. I used to think that also. Like, if I wasn't gonna get myself attached to Marvel or DC, I was thinking that Image would be the way to go. Quite honestly, now I think your own lane is the way to go. Your own path, because I mean, if you listen to Todd himself, no one's gonna push you better than you.
The best thing Image did was inspire the Gen X generation of creators to make comics, but they didn't lead them to the water. They just gave them a sip of it. Even now, Image has pocket imprints under them that seem to defeat the whole
They didn't even give them a sip. They just told them, "Hey, man, the water over there."
purpose of what Image Comics ethos was about. Imprints like Skybound will help creators produce their comics, but will retain IP rights to said comic. Like, what the fuck? And it's crazy because there are so many of these imprints popping up from writers, the only people in the industry who have the autonomy to do this. Image at one point was supposed to be leading the new wave of fresh and new ideas with exciting new artists and characters, but there's no identity to this company anymore. Just a hub for pros to get their side projects done. It doesn't have to be this way,
Or for Todd to sell toys.
though. If you actually study the real indie artists that were successful without losing their artistic integrity, they've given us the blueprint to success. People, for some reason, only look at the top of the mountain without actually taking in the full context of how these people got there in the first place. Circling back to Dave Sims, who gave you the blueprint on how to run an indie comics publisher, doing this in the 1980s and the 1990s with the technology he had. Sims even bypassed the distribution chokehold Diamond had by distributing his comics through a whole nother system, a move Diamond did not like at all. Dave Simmons, though, is a very questionable and weird person who has done some questionable and weird shit later on in his life, but that's another discussion for another day. Art Spiegelman and his wife, Francis Molly, produced their Raw magazine.
When it comes to the people who choose to go to a different path and not beat their head against the same wall as the big three, I say Image is a big three. It seems like once they get past the few bumps that they hit, it's nothing but clear skies from there.
At home using innovative and unique techniques and unique ways of printing a comic magazine. This is where Spiegelman's mouse first appeared as mini inserts in the magazine. Nowadays, you don't have to do any of this. All you need is access to the internet, a place filled with toxicity, also a place of opportunity for artists to thrive. So many ways to get your eyes on your comics, to sell your comics, and to build an audience. Have a direct line to your people. Funny enough, Liefeld loves the direct-to-consumer model, utilizing sites like Whatnot to live stream and sell his comics straight to his fans, though he seems to have forgotten about his Kickstarter or doesn't even utter the word Kickstarter unless it's to promote a movie about Stan Lee's assistant trying to cash in on his trauma porn film using footage he has of Stan Lee's last days of being abused. Yeah.
What? Yo. Wow. And I'll stop right there when it says Deadpool creator. That's wild.
Anyways, the roads are there for us artists. We may not get a union going, as most people either don't understand what a union's actual purpose is for, or think it's some communist socialist shit, even though most millionaires and billionaires function as socialists. A prime example.
Does anybody like ever wonder what would happen if the next Image Comics like actually it happens and it happens in a way of success where everyone like that does join up doesn't just take off running after the first few years? Like there are a lot of independent creators out there that if they just came together and start making their own few groups, there literally could be a hip hop level, underground hip hop level, like revolution to the comic book industry that it does need.
example of this is a salary cap for sports teams or big corporate buyouts from the government. We can still, as artists, come together and spread the knowledge and pay it forward. Tell people who are the best and affordable printers, cross promote each other's projects. If you have the funds, support each other's projects financially.
Bro, how the hell your whole hand don't be black as hell from your art? I don't know. Blows my mind because I be seeing your pieces. You be like putting some black on there. That should be dope. Because I am not dedicated to the color of black. Like I'm a little afraid, in my opinion. Trying to get over it. You, sir, you got that shit down.
The underground isn't dead. We just need to reframe how we look at what underground is and what actual independence looks like, what success in this space looks like realistically. Stop evangelizing these creators of past when many of them stood by or advocated for a cause they didn't actually believe in, just to fall back into the system that they were once against. We don't have to rely on a system that isn't here to work for us. We need to buck the system and create our own paths, our own artwork in the way we seem most comfortable with. To look back on art, we're supposed to have an understanding of the time frame it came from. When I look at 90s image, I don't only see high energy artwork, crazy costume designs, but I also see false promises, failures of the creators, and a generation of fans who can't get past their nostalgia to see what that era really was. That's why I'm done with the 90s. This video was pretty much
Ouch, I don't know about being done with the 90s. Take a little pain. I don't get shit. I need to be done. I just don't give a fuck. I'm just fucking around.
inspired by like the commentary around image and putting myself inside back into like following all of the like publications, artists and creators. um it was just really weird how people kind of talked about image and how people put up, especially the 90s guys, up on this high pedestal when
I think it's also because like their whole big gripe. Well, in my opinion, I think only one of them really had a big gripe, and that was Todd. And everyone else just kind of agreed with Todd and left with Todd. I don't think that all of them were really trying to leave in that way because they were, getting what they wanted in the first damn place. So I don't think that they were having the same problem of, you know, trying to get things across it. Like when you hear like all of those guys usually talk, they always talk glowingly about their time in Marvel and DC. It's only Todd that was like, hey, they didn't want me to draw this one, they didn't let me draw this one panel where I stabbed this dude in the eyeball, and so I was like, fuck this, I'm out. And it seems like it was only Todd who was the one who had the problem in the first place.
I mean, their influence is noticed, obviously, what their impact has been set and dealt on the community as a whole. But I just felt like it was unnecessary at times, and it seemed like it was put as a place where independent artists
Yeah,
need to
fire.
go in order to be successful, when I don't think that's the case at all for Image. I mean, a lot of people have said this before. The Image essentially is just a hub for creators to make their side projects. Is not what it used to be. A lot of the creators and indie creators that I followed when I first got into this space talked about how once they got their Image books, or once they got their books published through Image, it would be all grand and dandy. And obviously that is not the case. Once I started hanging out with real grassroots independent underground artists, I started to see what the landscape really looked like and what really you can make out of it. And that's kind of the place where I'm at and where I kind of am going to stay, at least for now. That's the whole point of me building this audience on YouTube and all of that. So I'm just one person. These are all just my opinions. Do what you
And they're good opinions to have, man. Like think about it like that. Because Todd didn't go back. So yeah, he didn't, you know,
Oh, come here.
blow up and have 80,000 IPs that he can turn into movies like Marvel. But at the exact same time, he is still viewed as the biggest indie that's out there, even if he wasn't an indie. But he never went back, even if he started there. The point is that you can't do this shit, man, because he ain't even the big money maker. There are people out there doing this way better, and you can be one of them. Anybody with the drive can.
want with your own comics. Create your comics however you see fit. Um, go if you want to be a published or image and that's just your dream to get published or image, then go and do that. It's not like an evil corporation or anything in that nature. People give it this weird like indie underground look or aesthetic when it's really not. It's another mainstream publication. It just doesn't have the mainstream
Big facts.
IPs as a Marvel or DC. But go ahead and do what you want to do. I'm not like beholden or against getting published through any major publisher. I mean, I would want to get published through a major publisher at one point. I don't know if it would be a comic book publisher. It might be more of like I'm more leaning to like a Pantheon or Abram Books or something like that. But that's just
Scholastic. Think about Scholastic. School book fairs. That's, you know, Dogman, Captain Underpants, Bone. The youth that we once were reading comic books are still looking for things to read that'll get them to become the adults that read these comic books or care about these IPs the way that they do. The only reason that these people have the advantage on us that they have is because they were around. Now it's our turn.
me in the path that I'm kind of figuring out what I want to do in the long run. Or, if you guys like, comment, subscribe. I won't have to go to a publication and you guys support the books. And I can just keep publishing books through my own self means. There's so many other paths and ways you can get your books produced nowadays. And I just want to encourage people to look into those paths and not just try to go through this one singular route that you have been subscribed to go down. I don't know. But yeah. But I appreciate you guys for watching this video to the end. Like, comment, subscribe. Check out my Patreon. Subscribe to my Patreon. It's only $5 a month. You get access to everything on the Patreon.
Go out there and support the dude, man. Like real shit. He's doing great work.
If you subscribe as a free member, you'll get access to a lot of content on there. I'm also a comic book creator. I have a bunch of comics on my website out right now. AWOL issue number 1 and issue number 2 are available on my website. Also, all my other bibliography is available on my website as well. I also have some free downloads. Sign up for my newsletter. Go check out my second channel, Kova's Lookout Live, where I do weekly live streams with up-and-coming independent artists to give eyes to them, as well as promote their books and what they got coming on. I also do sketchbook tours on that channel. I do reviews and I give out comic book recommendations. So if you're interested, go check out the second channel as well.
When I say the kick-ass video, that video, yo, peep that video and see how the movie has, for those who did not read the comic book, peep how the movie definitely softened the message compared to the comic book that I remembered reading going, why was there a movie being made?
Again, thank you for watching this video to the end. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.
Yeah, so definitely go check out the young brother. His link's in the description. I mean, he got way more subscribers than me, so I don't even know why I'm saying that shit. I'm just saying, like, hopefully, even if, you know, the algorithm pushes his video through mine or through his own, I really want to help his name get out there because he's putting out some strong messages that I really do agree with. And I want y'all to go out there, find y'all some indie books to actually support because the mainstream don't care.
If comic books aren't your thing, Sam Alonji is amazing. He does a lot of fantasy books.
So check it out. When it comes to comics, yeah, comic books got a lot. The people always think he's also superheroes. So when it comes to comic books, they're everywhere. Categories are everywhere. There's some for everybody, and there's an indie writer for everybody. So go out there and find yours. Y'all have a good one.